What's going on, everybody? This is Phil, California Underground. This video is a follow-up to a previous video that we had already done, which is commenting on Kimberly Klacik and her campaign expenditures, stuff that Candace Owens had brought up, and it was sort of in the vein of showing you how you can start to vet congressional candidates. And I've done plenty of videos in the past where I show you how to go through, look at the Secretary of State or the FEC, and figure out what are these candidates spending money on. That way you can better vet these candidates and determine whether they are worth your vote or not. So we had done this video a while back, probably back in June or so. And now here's the follow-up to the saga between Candace Owens and Kim Klacik. Kim Klacik has filed a lawsuit in the Circuit Court for Baltimore County, Maryland. This means that it's in state court. So there's two different types of courts. There's federal court and there's state court. So she decided to use the long arm of jurisdiction and file it in state court. And it's basically a complaint for defamation. Now, the reason I want to talk about this even more is because it is almost strikingly similar to what's going on with the Major Williams lawsuit, where he sued people who had brought up a lot of stuff about his campaign expenditures, also bringing up stuff about his past and his character and stuff like that. They're almost exactly, I feel like they're the same exact lawsuit, the same sort of circumstances where two different political candidates got questioned, they got stuff brought up or exposed about them. And now they're filing lawsuits against people who brought this stuff up so that they can try and scare them into stop talking about it because they supposedly got a lot of economic damages. But let's jump right into it. We'll talk about that a little bit more and the differences between like California and Maryland when it comes to like slap and anti-slap, and why I think the Major Williams lawsuit is definitely in a better position than it is for if you were in Maryland when it comes to anti-slap, but we'll get to that in a little bit. So it brings up defendant Candace Owens admits that she is not an investigative journalist, which I don't understand if that's, I mean, is that a prerequisite that you have to be an investigative journalist to ask about campaign? I mean, they make this stuff public so that people can look into this. You don't have to be an investigative journalist to look into candidates' campaign expenditures. The allegations she made were talking about a federal crime. Well, if you're not using campaign funds correctly, that is a federal crime. That's a FEC crime and violation, and you could get in a lot of trouble. She had no proof, cannot possibly verify, or cannot confirm information she presented as fact. I mean, she could probably do that, but that's what you need to do to allocate or allege in this lawsuit. And the only reason defendant started this was because of what started as a petty Twitter feud. I'll get into that as well, because there was a little bit of a Twitter feud. Specifically, defendant affirmatively accused Ms. Klacik of tax fraud, campaign fraud, money laundering, illegal drug use, and acting as a madame. There was no truth to the allegations. That's a big statement, Kim, to say there's no truth to the allegations, because there might be some truth. And that's really all you need when you need to defeat a defamation lawsuit. Ms. Klacik has lost and continues to lose financial opportunities, media appearance, and political support as a direct result of defendant's malicious and wanton statements. As far as I can tell, she's still on a lot of channels. She's still on Newsmax and she's on Fox News, and she has no problem with that. She's still a nationally recognized political figure. I mean, she splashed onto the national scene, and then Trump retweeted her, and now she's like a celebrity in the Republican Party. So I don't think she's really lost too many, but if she did, it's not something that we've seen. Ms. Klacik and her family continue to be harassed daily, and Ms. Klacik specifically receiving harmful and degrading comments because of the defamatory claims made by a defendant. Now, I'll say this. I don't know if her family is being harassed, which if it is, that's horrible. Like, don't harass a politician's family. Don't drag them into this. Politicians put themselves out there. If you want to be a politician, I'm going to warn you right now. You're opening yourself up to air all your dirty laundry, because in this day and age, when it comes to the internet, they'll find stuff. They'll find all your stuff, and people will connect, and people can connect all over the country within seconds of each other. So someone can see a video, instantly message the person who created that video, give more information, provide more context, more truth. Like, it is hard to be, it's hard to be a politician, I imagine, right now in today's day and age, is because information travels so quickly. Excuse me. This is all just kind of boilerplate language about jurisdiction and venue. We get into a statement of facts. Defendant is a high-profile conservative talking head. Nice little dig at her for saying she's a talking head. She's more like a political commentator, but a talking head makes her sound like she's just sort of a robot. So nice subtle jab by her attorneys there. Who is notorious for outrageous and controversial statements such as, quote, white supremacy and white nationalism is not a problem that is harming black America. Quote, obviously, if Candace Owens taken way out of context, but it sounds like something you would see come out of like the New York Times or the Washington Post, like taking quotes out of context. So that's not really that shocking that she's kind of going that route. And I guess the feud really was brought about by Juneteenth because President Biden signed in an executive order making it a federal holiday. So Candace said something about Juneteenth, and Kimberly Klacik said, believe it or not, not many in Black America are very aware the fight is about classism rather than racism. Unfortunately, the loudest mouth with the largest platforms represent the majority. This might come to a shock to you because of your lack of engagement with black people. That's really rich, considering that Candace started the Blexit movement. So that's really rich for Kimberly Klacik to say that Candace is not engaged with the black community. Nice try, but I don't think anyone believes that for a second. Who knows about Candace Owens? This is them just going back and forth on social media. And then it talks about this video. On June 22nd, she published a live video on the defendant's Instagram and Facebook accounts. A true and correct transcript of the video is attached. Also, just a subtle plug, I was shouted out in that video, so shout out to California Underground for making it on a Candace Owens video. The video has since been republished on social media platforms, including on YouTube, by individuals who, upon information and belief, have personal relationships with the defendant. And then Brandon Tatum also gets a little bit of a shout out, and it talks about how the Officer Tatum has around 1.66 million subscribers, and his video on this subject had 362,000 views. Side note, I say this a lot, but when people say like alternative media will never beat mainstream media, this is an example that it absolutely is beating mainstream media. Officer Tatum does one video about Kimberly Klacik and Candace Owens. He gets 362,000 views. Meanwhile, Little Brian Stelter can't get past like 250,000 views, and he has like $1 million production team. You know, Officer Tatum, Brandon Tatum sits in his house and he has a homemade studio and he gets millions of subscribers and hundreds of thousands of views. So I think alternative media is definitely making it's getting more and more popular. So that's just a side note though, because I always like to point out the numbers of what people are really watching. And it's not CNN, it's not MSNBC, it's stuff like that. It's alternative media like this. Goes on to talk about, again, she committed tax fraud, money laundering by making payments to sketchy businesses. Now, if you watch the last video that I did on this, we talked all about what this sketchy video was. The sketchy business was. The sketchy business was this business called Pearl Holdings. And Pearl Holdings LLC was not in good standing. So what does that mean? Usually they're behind on tax payments, that they're not staying up with stuff. And this happened like way back in 2019. So Kimberly Klacik tried to say, oh, they were not in good standing, they fell behind because of COVID, but in reality, they were not in good standing starting in 2019, so maybe they were already looking ahead to COVID, and they were just going to save their money and not pay their taxes, I don't know. But either way, she gave a whole bunch of money to them, supposedly for like this big election night party to pay off entertainers and food and catering and all that stuff, champagne, gift bags. And they were not in good standing. So it's kind of weird to give that much money to someone or one business, unless you're throwing one hell of a party. But that was one of the questions that was brought up, was this Pearl Holdings. And then after the fact, after all this started to come out, magically out of nowhere, Pearl Holdings was all of a sudden in good standing. You could say, look, the company that I donated to is in good standing. Well, Kim, unless you got in a DeLorean and went back in time and changed it to being in good standing, it doesn't change the fact that when you donated, it was still not in good standing and it was forfeited. So that's what they're talking about. And, you know, sketchy businesses is an opinion. You could say this looks like a sketchy business because it's not in good standing. That's an opinion. And that's not defamatory because it's your opinion. Ms. Klacik did not make any payments on behalf of the campaign to any individual or business entity. Now, this is really kind of where you have to read between the lines of lawsuits and how lawyers write this stuff up. She's saying that she personally did not make any campaign contributions or payments to businesses or entities. She says that it's all her campaign treasurer, right? However, who does the campaign treasurer work for, and who do they take direction from? They take it from the political candidate. So it's one of those lawyers' sleight of hand, if they're going for that, of, well, she herself didn't actually make those payments herself. Her campaign treasurer did, so she doesn't really know what's going on. I mean, that's not Ms. Klacik's whole thing. However, any good attorney would automatically depose Kimberly Klacik or the campaign treasurer, and you'd ask the campaign treasurer, what's your job? Okay, you're campaign treasurer. You make payments, correct? Do you make payments? Who tells you to make payments? Ms. Klacik. Okay, done. Like, that's it. Deposition over. So that's one of those sleight of hand, especially in these kind of lawsuits where they're trying to jump around the facts because it's all about defamation and what's true and what's not true. They try and jump around the facts a little bit so that it's like, oh, don't look over here, look over here. Like, it's a little sleight of hand. And it's a trick that a lot of attorneys use. Excuse me. Going on. And this is her, Candace Owens, responding to her cease and desist, saying, basically, I'm not taking the videos down. Make me. The commonality of defending and attacking public figures does not justify defamation. Defendant appears to take pride in having built her public persona, in part by attacking and disparaging such celebrities and public figures as musician and actor Harry Styles, rapper Cardi B, tennis player Naomi Osaka, and the entertainment personality Chrissy Teigen. Well, if you want to defend Chrissy Teigen, more power to you, but I don't think that's somebody you want to keep company with, especially when she's telling her followers to go kill themselves. Moving on. Politicians have canceled fundraising appearances with Ms. Klacik as a result of defendant's allegations. Exhibit 11 provides a specific example of such cancellation. Even a simple review of the comments of Ms. Klacik's social media platforms provides a clear picture of the reputational harm defendant's defamatory statements have caused Ms. Klacik. Okay. Going on. So I guess she's saying that people were commenting and asking her about this. There was a part about whether or not she used campaign funds for illegal drugs. And she said, I never used campaign funds for illegal activity, let alone drugs. Now, that doesn't change the fact that she may have done drugs. Again, that's one of those other admissions by omission, because she's not saying, I've never done drugs, and I'm alleging and I'm verifying to the court that I've never done drugs. But she's kind of saying, well, I've never used campaign funds for drugs, me personally. So it's one of those sleight of hands that once you get into discovery and you go back and forth, you can really start to pick apart everything and really get to the meat of this stuff. This is the fun part of like discovery, is you get to really pick apart their argument and make them admit stuff. Okay, count one. There's only one count in this entire lawsuit. It's defamation per se, which I'll tell you what the whole thing about that is. Officer Tatum, you got another little shout out there, so good for Officer Tatum. It says, defendant made these false and defamatory statements about Ms. Klacik with knowledge of their falsity and or reckless disregard as to their truth or falsity. Defendant made these false and defamatory statements with actual malice and with the intent of harming Ms. Klacik. And she's looking for a amount of $20,000. So let's go back. What is defamation per se? Defamation per se is when statements are so defamatory on their face, you assume that they're defamation, that they're defamatory statements. And there's a couple categories. And in this instance, she's probably arguing that the allegations that she engaged in criminal activity is defamation per se. That's one of the categories. You can say, well, you engaged in criminal activity and you could possibly be a criminal. Is defamation per se, because you're already putting out there to the world that you're a criminal. That's defamation, according to the courts, or that could be defamation under the court. Another one is like chastity of a woman, like maybe that has to do with like her status as a madame of a strip club. I don't know if she's being like technical about the word madame. It's kind of like Bill Clinton, where he's like, what the question is, what is means, what is kind of like, is madame, is she thinking madame means this or madame means that? But anyway, so that's another defamatory defamation per se statement. But in this case, that's where she's going. She's saying it's defamation per se. She's saying I'm a criminal. She's saying maybe I'm a madame, whatever. These are defamation per se. The issue is, though, and this is where we kind of tie back in with the Major Williams lawsuit that's going on here in California, is when you're a public figure, there is a higher standard for what is defamatory towards you, right? And that's because when you put yourself out into the public spotlight, you thrust yourself, that's the words they usually say, if you thrust yourself into the public spotlight, you invite criticism. You invite people asking questions about you or saying stuff about you. And the standard, they found that the standard had to be a little bit higher. That couldn't just be defamation as to private citizens. It had to be a little bit higher. So they came up with this idea, and it's worded a bunch of different ways. But in this particular case, they say knowledge of their falsity and a reckless disregard as to their falsity, truth or falsity. And it's made with actual malice. So actual malice is proven when you spread stuff with a knowing intent, like knowing that it was false, and you did it on purpose. That's actual malice. So like if there's a public figure and you spread stuff and you say like, well, Kimberly Klacik is the head of a Mexican cartel. It's false and you know it's false, but you're going to spread it anyway. That's like actual malice. Problem with that is the biggest defense to it is good faith defense. Like, do you believe what you're sharing has truth to it? And if you can prove that there is truth to it, or that you have a good faith belief that there is truth to it, Candace, all she has to show is these people came to me. They said they know they know Kimberly Klacik. They shared all this information with me. And therefore I shared it on my platform. It was my good faith belief that these people knew what they were talking about, that I didn't think that this was false. I believed that it was true. I looked into all this other stuff. I believed it was true. I believe there was a good faith effort to bring out this truthful information. That's the main defense. And here, just like the Major Williams case, she's going to have to prove that what Candace said was false, completely false, and that she did it on purpose, that she spread this false information on purpose, and that will prove actual malice. Could she argue that it was actual malice because they had like a little bit of a Twitter feud? Maybe they could say like there was a incentive for her to go out and spread this stuff because Candace doesn't like Kimberly Klacik, and she did it on purpose to spread all this false information. But if Candace can prove that to her knowledge it's true, or that it was good faith, she spread it in good faith based on the fact that it was true, then that's the defense. You know, truth is a defense to defamation. Same thing that's going on here with Major Williams is he's saying that they defamed me, they said all this stuff about me, and that they made allegations about my behavior with women and campaign expenditures. But if there is a little bit of truth, and if the people who spread it have a good faith belief that what they're spreading is true or has some truth to it, and they think it's worth sharing, that's a defense to a defamation lawsuit. So it's interesting because these two cases, as I read both of them, I felt like I was reading the Major Williams lawsuit. It was sort of a lot of the same stuff as, I was harmed because I'm a rising political star, and these statements and these people looking into me stopped me from getting book deals and lucrative speaking gigs and all this stuff. And because you exposed me and you looked into my past, or you looked into my campaign expenditures and you shared it on your platform, which has millions of people, now you've hurt me, so therefore I'm going to sue you for $20 million. Now, here's the big difference between Major Williams lawsuit and Kimberly Klacik lawsuit. One is taking place in Maryland, and the other is taking place here in California. California has a really broad anti-SLAPP statute. In fact, it is really, really broad, to the point where, like, if a law firm in your community is doing something shady and you want to speak out about it to the community because you think it's worth knowing that these attorneys are scumbags or something, there's case law to say that's okay. That's protected under our anti-SLAPP because it's part of the public interest, or it's a public issue. So it's very, very broad in terms of what it protects. And specifically in the Major Williams case, nothing is more concrete than critiquing or bringing up questions about a political candidate who wants to be governor of California. So in terms of the Major Williams case, if I do say so myself, a little bit of bias, there's a good chance it's going to lose to this anti-SLAPP motion that has been filed against it. Now, in terms of what's going on in Maryland, Maryland has a little bit of a different standard when they're anti-SLAPP. It's definitely not as broad as California. And it says, anti-SLAPP is brought in bad faith against a party who has communicated with a federal, state, or local government body, or the public at large, report on blah, 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 or in any other way exercise rights in the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. Article 40. I highlight this one because this one's really about the press asking questions regarding any matter within the authority of a government body. That doesn't seem as broad as California. California has all these different stipulations. One of them is if it's on, the catch-all is subsection E4, which is basically anything that has to do with public interest or widespread public interest. Anything like that is subject to anti-SLAPP. So anything you speak on about those issues, if it falls under that, it could be potential for anti-SLAPP. This is not great. Definitely not as broad as California. It doesn't look like it's really the same standard as in California. It doesn't look like there's that much of an avenue. Albeit I'm not an expert at Maryland anti-SLAPP. I've did a little research and people said it's a really poor anti-SLAPP statute that needs to be amended. But it's definitely not as broad as California. So the anti-SLAPP against Major Williams on his defamation is in a much stronger position than anything right now against Kim Klacik. However, Candace is probably going to get really good lawyers. And their lawyers are going to file a motion to dismiss. And the lawyers are going to say, this is why, because what she said is true. Here's her evidence. Here's proof. Here's exhibits, yada, yada, yada. Therefore, you should dismiss this because you can't base, you only had one count. I mean, you didn't even give yourself like a fighting chance. You just said, just this one count. So all you have to do is knock that one count out and the entire complaint falls apart. But I assume I'm pretty sure she'll get really good attorneys and those attorneys will be able to know that. Now, here's the issue that I don't understand as a political figure. If you are going to sue someone over this stuff, it's like a poker game whereby you're saying, here are my cards, show me your cards. You may not want to see what's on that person's cards because when discovery happens, if it gets past the motion to dismiss and it survives, you may not want to see what discovery holds, and you may not want people to see what discovery holds. So that's a case where a lot of stuff could come out about you that you did not necessarily want coming out. And sometimes it's better to leave sleeping dogs lie because now you're in court. It's going to be public record. People can look into it. Candace's attorneys will go after them like bulldogs and make sure that they prove the truth of everything that she said or enough truth to show that it's not defamation. So it'll be interesting to follow this one. I'll be sure to give updates on this because I think it's an interesting case. And I think it's sort of similar in the sense of the Major Williams case about politicians and about politicians in general and how some of them don't really like to be asked or critiqued about what's going on with their campaign funds or what they're doing with their campaign funds or what their past is. And, I think all that stuff is worth vetting and worth looking into. If you want to learn more about that, go back to the previous Kimberly Klacik video I did where I walk you through excuse me, how to go through the FEC, go through the filings, all that stuff. I walk you through step by step so you can do it for yourself. And I've also done it for the Secretary of State, so you can look into the Secretary of State. But this is important. Vet your candidates. And if they don't like it, too bad. That's the problem when you become a politician is your whole life is out on full display. So with that said, I'll keep you updated on this. I'm going to follow this. I think this is really interesting stuff, but that's just the nerdy attorney in me. If you like this video, make sure you subscribe, like, review, or leave a comment for the algorithm. Also, I have the audio podcast. Same thing. Subscribe, like, review. All that stuff on Instagram at California Underground every week, 9 a.m. Do coffee and California politics. And we talk, we sit, we chat, we talk about California politics over coffee. Sometimes some national stuff, but mostly California stuff. So we'll keep an eye on this. We'll see what happens, but I don't think this will survive. In my personal opinion, I don't think it'll survive a motion to dismiss. And if it does, buckle up for discovery because it's going to be fun to see what happens. So with that, thanks for tuning in, everybody. See you on the next one.